Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Learn Selenium WebDriver using C# in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. In the last class, we learned another session about how we can create a new page object and add method in the page object and declare that page object in our Selenium test. And also we initialized that page object to access the methods inside that page object so that we can make use of those methods in the Selenium test. Let me show you the test again. In the last class we created a new page object called sign-in, and we initialized that page object by passing the driver instance, and finally we accessed a method inside a new called type in email method. So that's how we used our page objects and initialized those page objects, and finally we concluded our test. Today we will learn how we can run multiple tests in Visual Studio Code when there are a lot of tests. As we can see, we have only two tests here, and each test have run test option, and also you can see run all test. This is by default when you install the default extension, the Microsoft Visual Studio, the unit framework provides these options. So whenever you add a test annotation to a particular method to specify that it's a test, it will provide an option to run test. But this is pretty easy when you have only a few tests, say 10 or 15. But in Selenium WebDriver testing, when you keep developing framework and when you add more number of tests, it will be a little bit difficult to use this option run test for individual test. You have to literally scroll down to all the particular tests and to run it. And if you run all tests, the only way you can get the results is in the console. Say, for example, this is the output here, and if I let me run all tests, and you will see the console starts printing it. So it basically it will run the two tests which were mentioned in our Selenium class, and as you can see, one test has outcome failed and another test outcome passed. But if there are some 50 or 100 tests, you have to scroll down each test through the console, and it's really a time-consuming process. One cannot search for a particular test, and it will be very difficult to find the stack trace and whether what test has failed when you run all tests. So in that case, this option may not work or will not be feasible to use run all test or run individual test. So in this case, we have one extension for Visual Studio Code, which is called .NET Code Test Explorer. This .NET Code Test Explorer is specifically meant for .NET tests written in C# for unit framework. So when you install this extension, it will provide a very nice tree structure of the tests written in your Selenium class. So what it will do is, as soon as you install it and configure it, it will recognize both of your tests, and it will show you the name of those tests. And there's a little small play button, an icon, I would say, to run individual test. And you don't have to go through any console to find which test I have run. And it also show with the beautiful colors, the green and red, if the test passes or failed. So that will be easy to recognize which test has failed, which test has passed. let's see how useful it is by installing the extension. So let's search for that extension. So the extension name is .NET Core Test Explorer. So there you go. The first one is this is the .NET Core Test Explorer, which will help you to run all tests from a nice tree structure. So let's install it. Okay, it's not installed. As soon as you install, you see a small funnel-shaped icon, which is called test. And let's go there. Okay, so as soon as you see, it says no test found. That's because to use this extension, you must have one of the basic package provided by Microsoft, which is called Microsoft Test.sdk package. So to install that, first you have to go to your project file and check if you have already installed. So if you have here, I have installed it, which is we have Microsoft Test Platform, but it's not the one. It's called Microsoft Test.sdk. Once we install Test.sdk, if you have any other Microsoft packages, you should probably, it's advised to remove those, such as this one, because it will start giving errors. So first, let us install the basic package, which is called Test.sdk, and then you will see some errors, and once you errors related to this package, and once you remove that package, it should be all right. So let's install the basic package, which is Test.sdk. So go add package, Test.sdk. Test.sdk, and it will fetch the latest version. I will select the latest version. So you see it has installed here, and it's asking us to restore. Let's restore it. Okay, restore done. Now, if you go to Omnishop log, okay, so now we have installed SDK. So now let's go to here and refresh it. It's trying to find the tests. There you go. So you saw, as soon as we have installed Microsoft.NET.SDK, which is the main component for the .NET Core Explorer extension, now you see that it has recognized get error message test and sign in test. So if I click on this, it will take you to that test, and if you click the second test, it will take you to the second test. So now this is a tree structure of tests written in program test. So it's very clear that this extension recognizes all your Selenium tests and show you in a nice structure, so that you can recognize, okay, I've got so many tests. So you don't have to go through actual Selenium file, the test file, to find your test. All you can do is just click here and then to go to a test. Now, this is one of the important things, that you can see a small icon says run test. So you can run this test from this extension, from this small window. So either you can run all tests, you can also refresh your tree structure if you have added a new test and to reflect the extension, or you can stop the test. So let's run our first test and we'll see the result, which is very, very useful by looking at the test. You can see whether it passed or failed. So let's click Run Test. As you can see, I just click the first test and you can only run the first test. So as soon as you see, when I click Test, it opened a window, and then let's close the test. And now the test has failed, and you can, the best part is it will also recognize red color as soon as the test fails, and you can easily see why the test has failed. That's because the expected and the actual values doesn't match. As you can see, you don't have to go to the console and search all the way where your test is located and the reason for failure. It's a very nice feature that it will just show on the test file and why it has failed. So now let's run the other test to see what happens. So let's run the second test. So if you see a small wheel is spinning wheel, that means the test is running. That means your test is running, and it will finish as soon as the test execution completes. As you can see, the browser is opened and it did the operations, and there you go. So the test has finished, and the test has also passed, and it will give a green color tick mark as soon as the test finished. And you don't have to go to the console and try to find whether the test has passed or failed. So this is a very nice feature that it will just, if the test passes, it will mark it as a green color. And if the test fails, we can go to a test has failed. So this is one of the nice features the extension provides. So let's assume you added one more test. Or before we go in that, let's assume you want to run both of the tests at one shot. And you can use the Run All Tests feature, and let's click that, and you can see both the test runs. And you can see it will provide the results for both of the tests one shot. So let's add that. So now I've clicked Run All Test. It will run Get Error Message Test as well as Sign In Test. So it's running the first test, which is Get Error Message, and after that, now it's running the second test. And now you see the both tests finished. And from here, you can easily recognize which test has passed and which has failed, which is very time saving, and you don't have to go to the console. Now let's see if you add one more test and how we can, the extension will help you interact. Now let's say login test, or let's say sign in test. And all I'll do is just remove it. And just say on compare two strings, and just to test it, and purposely let me fail that. Okay, now I added one more test, but it doesn't reflect here. That's because you just added it and you need to refresh it. So let's refresh it. So what it will do is it will try to find all the tests. New test. So now you should see 3 tests. So now let's run all the tests by clicking this one. Now, as you can see, it's running Get Error Message Test, Sign In Test, Sign Up Test. So now it's running the first test, which is opening the Gmail window. And now click Sign In Test, and finally the Sign Up Test. As you can see, it has executed all the 3 tests. This is how we can make utilize of .NET Test Explorer extension, which is very useful when you have 100 or 200 tests in Selenium Test. So if you thing. If you have any questions, feel free to add